Stay tuned for urban legends to ghostly tales of the paranormal, because now it's time for
Message on the Wall.
This is Message on the Wall, which over the coming weeks will present haunted cemeteries, with this first instalment bringing you haunted cemeteries in Illinois. One of the most well known is probably the Greenwood Cemetery at Decatur, with claims that it is one of the most haunted cemeteries in Illinois, with stories of ghostly figures and a history of grave robbing and the unmarked graves of Confederate soldiers who, while held prisoner, died of yellow fever. It's not surprising that this site has attracted many paranormal investigations. There was once a mausoleum that fell into such disrepair that in 1967 it was demolished, with the remains of its occupants that went unclaimed being placed in a common grave close by. There had been many reports of lights being seen around the mausoleum, as well as screams having been heard, and even now there are strange things that occur where the mausoleum stood. Another haunted cemetery is a now abandoned Bachelor's Grove in Cook County. The oldest gravestone is that of William Nobles, who died in 1838, with the last burial at the cemetery taking place in 1989. With new roads being laid out, it's left the cemetery isolated with access by a narrow, chained-off road, and this has also led to vandalism as well as satanic rites being performed. It also became a place for amorous teenagers to park up, and that is when the ghost stories began. It's been estimated that there was over 200 graves with headstones, but with vandalism many were destroyed, along with trees that grew there, leaving only 20 headstones to date. The stories began after a new road was opened, steering traffic away from using the one running alongside the cemetery. With the road going out of use, it made it an ideal place for drag racing that led to stories of a farmhouse that, if there at some time, had not been so for decades. Those brave enough to drive up to the farmhouse reported that it seemed to shrink before disappearing altogether. Orbs have been seen and many EVPs have been got at the site by those out for a ghost hunt. The Ghost Research Society have also conducted several investigations at the site, but have yet to produce any evidence that would substantiate that Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is really haunted. At Cuba, on West Cuba Road, you will find the White Cemetery. Here there are reports of white lights hovering around the gravestones, and they don't always remain within the confines of the graveyard, as they have also been seen to float along the fence that borders the cemetery and go out onto the road. And like Bachelor's Grove, here also a house is seen that just simply disappears. Presumably it was the one that did once stand there, having been burnt to the ground long ago. Another regular sighting is a black car, and also an elderly lady with a lamp that flags down passing motorists who have stopped to help, only for her to disappear. The road beside the cemetery has been described as a creepy place at night. Moving on to Buckner, here there is the Harrison Cemetery that is said to be haunted. Sat by woodland, it's an isolated spot with Washington Street running along the side that is no more than a country lane. The cemetery was set up over 100 years ago for settlers and their families to the township of Browning. The cemetery is said to be guarded by a male and female spirit. Could it be Andrew and Elizabeth Harrison, who were interred there in 1845 and 1846? Only showing themselves at night, the man is said to be seen more often in the meadow beside the cemetery, emitting an orange glowing aura. The woman remains within the cemetery and giving off a white glowing light in the far corner by a set of pine trees. It is also in this area that an unusual monument, at least for a headstone, can be found. Being set aside from the other graves, the stone is carved out into the shape of a piano. It's thought to be the grave of a child, but there is no name or date engraved into the stone. The interesting thing is that piano music has been heard at exactly midnight. And those are some of the haunted cemeteries of Illinois, brought to you by Message on the Wall. You have been listening to Message on the Wall, brought to you in association with Paranormal Parodies. You can find Paranormal Parodies at paranormal-parodies.com.